we really like being on the ground floor with new businesses, startups, folks who have an idea, maybe they want to turn their hobby into a business.
Right.
That's always been, a very core part of our commercial practice. But even though that's the bulk of it, we also do, for example, some criminal defense, where obviously right there you're really helping out somebody who's in a dire situation that's very personal to them. But that's always what we've kind of been interested in doing through our firm, and even just through my own personal practice. And it gives you a great deal of pleasure, particularly where most folks who have either small businesses or they're solo entrepreneurs,
right,
or they have an individual problem. If they're facing a very large business, a large corporation,
mm-hmm,
they feel, oh my gosh, that corporation is going to have, some of the highest paid talent, have hundreds of lawyers, so how can I possibly match up with them? And that's what I like about our firm. We call ourselves a litigation boutique. It's a very small firm. We give you like a very large firm quality experience, but with a small firm attention to detail. And that comes from the way that we've kind of grown over the years. We're very client oriented.
Well, you're very nimble. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the Getty situation, how that all came about. But I was amazed at how quickly you responded. It really started off with an AVO, an email, a couple of exchanges, but you really moved on this quick when you started finding out about it.
Yeah, that's how we are.
You're just so fast moving. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, we're very reactive. We see an issue that we think we can help out on. And it's not just this. There's been others along the way you can find out about if you look into it. But what struck me here, frankly, was a direct opportunity to help exactly the kind of business that tends to be part of our firm against exactly the type of adversary that most people feel they have no chance to defend themselves against, because they can outspend and outlast them.
So Oscar, tell me about your legal education and how were the years in law school?
Well, I went to New York Law School, downtown Manhattan. I knew I wanted to be in the city. I knew for certain that that's where I wanted to go to law school, because I knew that's where I was going to want to practice.
Really?
I made a lot of other law schools, but I wanted to be in Manhattan because I knew that's where I wanted to be a lawyer, was in New York, New York. So
gotcha.
I went to New York Law School, did very well there. I graduated near the top of my class. Was on the Law Review, was an editor of the Law Review. At the same time, involved in a lot of other activities there, the Latino Law Students Association, other publications that were involved at the law school, published some articles even during law school.
You were pretty motivated,
I
huh?
was very motivated.
What motivated you so much?
I honestly could say that I just knew this is something that, because of my personality, maybe my background, I was born to do, that this was what I was meant to do.
You found your calling fairly early, and so you just threw yourself into it. You were passionate about it.
Right, and I almost couldn't understand how I didn't know so much even earlier that this was what I was going to be good at and was going to be able to do and make a living and be successful at.
Right.
So I had a number of jobs during law school in the law school field where I tried to see what kind of law did I want to practice, what did I want to do, and very quickly I learned that I wanted to litigate.
Really? Why litigation?
I just,
what drew you?
Again, I'm a good arguer. I was always somebody who could spot an issue and hammer something home. I'm a good listener, so that I could hear what the other side is saying and try to pick apart their arguments and their positions, recognize their strengths and their weaknesses. I have a good memory, which also helps with litigation, but I'm a competitive person. And
I guess you'd have to be if you're going to be a litigator.
You'd better be, especially in New York. You'd better be.
And I hear you got to be quick on your feet too, because you have no idea what's going to come at you, especially when you're in the courtroom.
You always prepare.
Right.
You always plan ahead.
Absolutely.
You always have as much control of the situation. But when you're dealing with live witnesses,
yes,
live judges, and a jury, anything can really happen, and you have to be able to change focus, shift, and think on your feet, because sometimes a witness who you even prepared and is ready to testify may throw a curveball. And certainly the other side's witnesses, you have no idea really what they're going to say, and be prepared to challenge that. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the competitive nature of it. I liked sparring with my adversary, and I took a position during law school with the New York City's law department. That is the law firm, essentially, that represents the city of New York. And it was like perfect for me. I started there as a law school student and started doing things right away that other folks didn't get to do until they were attorneys. Because when you work for government, you're allowed as a law student to do certain things that only lawyers are allowed to do.
Really? Why is that?
Well, because they recognize that government can't pay what the private sector pays.
Right.
That they're overburdened, and they need to find a way to alleviate this workload. And one of the ways to get cheap help is to be able to hire law students to do what lawyers do. So by the time I graduated law school, I had already done, I say, over 50 depositions, maybe even more.
No kidding.
I had argued literally hundreds and hundreds of motions. I had made, got to be close to 200 plus court appearances. So because I was there for a couple of years as a law school student, working pretty much every day, going to court every day and taking depositions, sometimes 2 depositions a day, sometimes 3 depositions a day when you're really busy. And so we were always on the front line, which I loved. And it's funny because when I was getting ready to graduate, like I said, I had very good grades.
Right.
I was an editor of law review, so I had a lot of offers from Wall Street type firms.
Word got out on you, huh?
I applied for them.
Yeah.
You interviewed for them. I certainly think they liked the fact that I was coming with some litigation experience, which is unusual for a law school student.
And you were published too.
And
right?
I had published an article,
Yeah.
and I also had the benefit of not only the experience, but the grades. I had good grades.
Yes.
So I think I was, an attractive candidate, and I knew that's not where I wanted to practice. It was a lot more money. Let me just tell you, it was probably, I'm going to say close to 3 times the starting salary what the city of New York was going to pay me.
Right.
But I chose the city of New York because I wanted to litigate, and I knew correctly that once I was graduated and admitted to the bar, I was going to start trying cases right away. And all I ever wanted to do was to try cases. And sure enough, I was right. I tried cases.
Right.
I tried case after case after case for about 4 years. And after 4 years, I was actually after 2.5 years, I was the senior trial attorney for the city of New York. I was the youngest person. To my knowledge, I was the first Hispanic person and the youngest person ever to hold that title. And I tried any case that involved $1 million or more in exposure. Now, back in 1986, 87, when I got the position in 87, $1 million case was obviously a very significant case.
Yes.
Or a press-worthy case was also in this particular unit. And there were only a handful of lawyers who tried these cases. So it was an incredible experience because I got to litigate against the top civil personal injury attorneys in the city of New York, which is saying the best of the best. And if there's one way to learn how to try a case, it is by getting knocked around by some of the best.
Exactly.
And I
you must have learned a ton of lessons along the way.
Very hard lessons. I won, obviously, because I kept getting bigger and better cases, I won my fair share. But certainly some of these cases were really, really difficult cases to defend. And you had these deans of the bar who were handling them. And I learned so much from them that it allowed me, when I was getting ready to leave, to know what I needed to do to be successful in a courtroom, especially litigating on behalf of clients. Because the one thing that was lacking
right.
by working with the city of New York is you didn't really feel like you had a client.
Right.
I represented
the people.
The city, right. I used to like to say I'm Ed Koch's lawyer because Ed Koch was a very popular mayor of the city of New York at that time.
Right.
And I would try to personalize that was my client because people liked Uncle Ed, even if they hated the city, they liked Ed. And so I needed to try to find a client. I couldn't bring the Statue of Liberty with me into court. So I missed that.
Yeah.
And it frankly took a while when I went into private practice to get used to representing somebody. Of course, the other added benefit to working at the law department was where I met my wife.
Yeah.
And we got
I never knew that.
Yep, she was a trial investigator there.
Really?
So we met there, started dating after about a year of me knowing her, and then we, of course, got married. 20 some odd years later, we're still going. But so I owe that to the law department as well. Great experience, and I found my wife and started my family. So
Absolutely.
it was a great experience. So then.